Morning, all. All right, news of the day video for all you fine people on the internet. Yes, first news of the day video that I've done since, last Saturday? I want to say last Saturday. But yes, news of the day, starting with the reason why I'm wearing a Canucks jersey. Quinn Hughes added to Team USA for the final on Thursday. So this is good news for Team USA, and I'll say, too, as a Canuck fan, it'll be interesting to see how he plays. But he will not play unless there's another injury. So I've already seen a lot of posts online about shame about something happening to Jake Sanderson, even though nothing's happened to Jake Sanderson. It's obviously just, kidding around. But the reality is that at the rate guys have been getting hurt, or, the way that the flu's been going around with these teams, would I be surprised if Quinn Hughes plays? No, I would not be surprised to see Quinn Hughes play. And for the American team, I don't think that's going to make them any easier to defeat. It should be a very entertaining final either way. And I think it's great for Hughes, too. He's just coming in for the one game. You cross your fingers, hope he doesn't get hurt. And that the time off that he's had between the Canucks last game and then this final will have allowed him to heal up just that much more from where he was at the time of the break. Also with Canucks news, Drew O'Connor has signed a contract extension, 2-year extension for $2.5 million per season. And I've already seen people saying that that's too much by about $500,000. The salary cap's going up a lot this summer, and it's going up a lot over the next 2 years. So I don't think the $500,000 is going to be a big deal for the Vancouver Canucks. And I also think that with the salary cap rising the way it's been, and will continue to do, I think that's only going to benefit teams like Vancouver that may have some contracts that are of the higher variety. So, yeah, nice to see Drew O'Connor sticking around. So for people who weren't happy with the Pettersson-O'Connor trade because it was for 2 rentals, both players are going to be sticking around with Vancouver, and I think that's a good thing. So, yeah, we'll see how they do. Also, looking ahead to the final on Thursday, Austin Matthews and both Matthew and Brady Tkachuk are expected to play in the final against Canada. It does not mean they're 100%. It will be very interesting to see how this affects the playoff chase after the tournament is done, because there are some really good players who are coming out of this one kind of banged up. A signing that took place on, I think it was the 9th, but I'm going to mention it here because I really didn't have a news video to do. I know I saw this one take place, and I was like, well, I can't just make a video about that. I'm not going to stand in front of the teacups right and, hey, Sam Steele signs an extension. But he did. He signed an extension with Dallas on the 9th. 2-year extension, $2.1 million cap hit for Sam Steele. Again, I think for a bottom 6 forward, I think that's perfectly fine. Steele's fit in pretty well in Dallas, and that cap hit isn't going to be awful for them and for him. So congratulations to Steele on the extension that he signed a while ago, but I haven't done a news video since then. So looking at the odds, when you look at the draft lottery that's going to be taking place once the season's done, which is 2 months from now, right now the San Jose Sharks have a 25.5% chance of drafting first overall, of winning that lottery pick. The one thing I do wonder is, so they have Celebrini, they have Smith, they have a lot of good young players. Might they move down? This is seen as not being as stellar a draft as previous years, so maybe we see the number 1 pick in play, especially if it's a team like the Sharks that may feel like, all right, we've already got Celebrini, we may not need the guy who's number 1. Another team might offer us a pretty hefty package for that number 1 draft pick. So that's something to keep an eye on, because it might be prudent for them to add, maybe some other players. And I'm not saying trade down to like 20th or anything. I'm saying like trade down to number 5 or number 4, that kind of thing, and add another piece along the way. So yeah, Sharks will be one to keep an eye on, and the Chicago Blackhawks are second in terms of the odds. For anybody wondering, Pittsburgh's odds of drafting first overall, 6.5%. And I'm sure that if Pittsburgh wins the draft lottery, everybody will have a very normal, balanced reaction to that. So at any rate, yeah, San Jose right now has the best odds of drafting first overall. Brandon Hagel. This is a silly question, I think, honestly. Hagel saying that he was playing for the flag, not for cameras, when he dropped the gloves with Matthew Tkachuk. Well, of course. I would also say that for Canada, the best option for them with this final is don't get involved in all that. Don't get involved in all the punching and the fisticuffs. Just, go out there, play the game, and try to keep it in that lane and not fire up a team and a crowd. And at any rate, Hagel saying what we know, that he was playing for the flag, not for cameras. So yeah, I find that such an odd thing, and I've seen this headline everywhere, so I figured, well, I'll throw it on the board. But of course, Coach Cooper saying that Cale Makar will play in the final on Thursday. So Makar being in there, and once again, does not necessarily mean any of these players are 100%. And I've seen some comments about, why isn't THG like super duper psyched about this? Because it's tournament, it's a 4-team tournament. It's good hockey. I'm not saying it's not good hockey, but in terms of my excitement, and this has been the case since I started watching hockey back in the early 80s. And I discovered the National Hockey League, and I remember watching an All-Star game when I was very young. I remember all the players wearing the different team jerseys out on the ice, and I thought it looked great to see all these different jerseys out there. So when the All-Star game happened and they were just wearing the generic NHL logos and Wales and Campbell logos, I was kind of disappointed, to be honest. But at any rate, I have always ranked it that the Stanley Cup playoffs that is where I get really excited. I am always excited every year for the Stanley Cup playoffs because every playoffs is completely different. We can all make our projections at the start of the playoffs for who we think's going to win, who we think's going to be out, and in the end, we can be proven completely wrong, and we're fine with that because usually it ends up being a very entertaining tale one way or the other. Now, second on the list would be the Olympics, and what I like is that the Olympics in general are a lot of fun to watch. In Winter Olympics, I've always enjoyed watching the Winter Olympics. There was one before I had a hockey channel. There was one year that I actually took an Olympic week off of work, so I burned a vacation week at work to stay home and watch the Olympics. So I used to also burn days towards holidays to watch the trade deadline, to watch the July 1st free agent frenzy. And I know people are going to say, well, it's a holiday in Canada anyways. A lot of jobs that I've worked over the years, you don't get July 1st off. You just get paid double time and a half for working. So I've sacrificed that to stay home and watch the free agent frenzy on July the 1st. Because that's where my interest lies. I am a National Hockey League fan primarily, but the Olympics are always a lot of fun, and the Winter Olympics especially. And then the NHL regular season I would put third. I find it fascinating with the regular season how quickly things can change. You've got 32 different teams. You've got, let's say, over 600 players to keep track of and all these great storylines. And then other tournaments, and I would include Four Nations in this, end up getting to that number 4 spot for me. And that would include the World Cup of Hockey back in 2016. It would include the Canada Cups all the way back to, I would say, 87 was the one where I got really excited because we had a chance to see Lemieux and Gretzky play together. And that just felt great. And I know people are going to say, well, that's how we're feeling now. Right. And when the 87 tournament happened, I was 14 years of age. So age is probably part of it. I know these tournaments come and go, and that the National Hockey League at this point has a very good relationship with the NHLPA. So this Four Nations tournament is going to lead to World Cups, and it's going to feel more special when it's a World Cup, and it's going to feel more special next year when it's an Olympics. I'm not saying the hockey's bad. I'm not saying it's not fun to watch. I just don't get so into it. I would also throw in there, too, that when I go to hockey games, I'm not one of these guys who paints his face and screams and waves stuff. And I mean, I'll wave the towel. Sure, I'll wave a rally towel because it's what you're supposed to do as a fan. And I applaud and cheer when a team scores a goal that I'm rooting for. But that's really about it. I don't scream and yell during games. I don't get really, deeply emotionally involved, which I think is part of the reason why this format that I use and me watching all these games works, because I'm not a reactionary, emotional fan for the most part. There are exceptions. The exceptions usually during the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's where I start getting more emotional and start getting more upset when a team I root for doesn't perform the way that I'd like them to. But yeah, during tournaments like this, I have seen overreactions to Canada losing in round robins for years. I talked about it in the World Juniors this past December, that people have always overreacted to Canada losing because it's Canada's game. How dare they? Yeah, and they're human. Guys make mistakes. And right now we're in a league where the U.S. and Canada both have excellent athletes from top to bottom on their rosters. I just feel lucky to be able to watch it happen. So, my excitement level is always for the Stanley Cup playoffs. And obviously March the 7th being the trade deadline, I'm excited to see what happens there and see who gets added and who gets dumped off and what rental prices are going to look like. That's what's going on in my brain. And so this 2 weeks, it's nice to have that break, sure, from watching those games every night. But it certainly helped me catch up my sleep the last couple of days. But I don't feel that same level of excitement that others do. I don't. And I can't artificially create that. Thursday we're gonna have the game between Canada and the U.S. And all I thought when I was watching the Canadian game against Finland yesterday was, yeah, that's probably the matchup it should be, is Canada and the U.S. They are the strongest rosters, and we'll see what the next World Cup, what the tournament looks like. This does have a feeling, like for instance, Quinn Hughes coming in and not being allowed to play. That doesn't feel right with this tournament. It doesn't. And I understand that there's certain regulations and rules, but there's just things with this tournament that I kind of have to shrug about and say, well, I mean, it's mostly best on best. Mostly. Their terminology, not mine. So, at any rate, there you go. And so for people like, he's got to start getting more energetic. I can't think of a legal way for me to suddenly get really energetic about a tournament that I'm watching, I'm interested in, but yeah, it's not the end of the world for me. If Canada loses on Thursday, I'm not going to be here screaming about, oh, Canada's dominance is over. Canada's dominance on the international stage has been waning for a long time. And it's not because Canada is dropping off, it's because other countries have caught up. And I think that's good for hockey, it's good for the National Hockey League. And when I look at players like Quinn Hughes plays for the Canucks, Mark Besser plays for the Canucks, Connor Hellebuck plays for Winnipeg. Kyle Connor plays for Winnipeg. So there are a lot of American star players who play on Canadian teams, and I think that's good, just like Canadian star players playing on American teams. So, yeah. Anyways, there you go. Thank you guys so much for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And, yeah, so I'll come up with some other video goodness. I'm going to have to continue that series on the quarter century and looking at the teams. I do have an order that I'm going in with that. I'm just debating about how to get that done and whether I'll just do one per day. I'm considering just doing one per day until the series is done. So it'll be a while because it's a nice large stack of teams there, but maybe doing one per day. Just the interest wasn't any higher than I thought it was going to be, and I did leave them for the end when we were coming back. And I knew it wasn't going to be, those weren't going to be a big draw. But it's something I find interesting. So, at any rate, there you go. But thank you guys so much for all your support. It's been greatly appreciated. And yeah, I will talk to you again soon.